Excuse me. Okay, I was just going to go over. Okay, first, did you get to see my email about the CPA Academy webinar?
I haven't actually been into my school email yet.
Okay. Okay. Sorry if you can hear that. Can you hear my dogs?
Slightly.
Oh, okay. Okay, I've got the door shut. Hopefully my husband shuts them up. Okay. The webinar is already over for today. But just there's a tool out there. I found recently a website, CPA Academy. They have a lot of free webinars. And this will be good for you since you're going for your CPA. They are they have continuing ed hours. But I watched one today that just happened to be on the top 20 controls for detecting and preventing fraud.
Okay.
It was pretty good. Wasn't a lot of new material, but just a real good refresher.
Right.
The other day, I was hoping, and it's just you just register for free, and I posted that hoping maybe one or two of you could catch it. I can't remember. I think it might be offered again in November, and for you, that might be a good one to watch since you're going into some auditing. But one of the discussion questions this week is on internal controls. And I noticed some of the posts were interesting. It looked like you covered segregation of duties, which is a good typical control that a lot of companies recognize. Hannah covered the standardizing of financial reports, which a lot of companies might do, but you don't think of as really being a internal control. And then she got that from an article by David Ingram, who listed out 7 internal controls, and he went down a level instead of addressing like what we recognize as the top 3. The detection, preventative, and corrective being the top upper level controls, and then below those we have, using approvals, authorization, verifications, reconciliations, audits, reviewing access, trial balances, approvals, the segregation of duties. And then a question I've had is, most generally, we think of these controls are for preventing fraud or preventing bad things from bad people from doing bad things, like Enron. And this was all SOX was created because of WorldCom and Enron. But in all likelihood, what do you think these usually prevent? The highest percentage, do you think these controls are preventing fraudulent behavior? Do you think these are preventing employees from doing, preventing crime, preventing them from making, I want to say bad decisions, but making intentional bad entries to overstate income, overstate inventory? We know that happens on time to time, but do you think these these controls are from doing that, or do you think most of the time these controls are preventing errors? And my experience,
I think a lot of it.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I think a lot of it would be to prevent errors, but a lot of it is also preventative. So the hope is the controls would make someone second guess, I guess, before they do something they shouldn't.
Yeah. And I think you're right there. It is, I think a lot of these controls are in place to prevent the errors. By having the authorization or an approval, then when you make a journal entry, it should have an approval. So you have that second pair of eyes just looking at it. A lot of systems have the checks and balances in place that'll prevent you just from posting to the wrong account, or it keeps you from posting to debits. So there's a lot of controls in place just to prevent errors from happening or detect errors from happening. It keeps you from, I guess I've already said, posting to debits, or you can't post a finished good to your raw inventory account. System controls like that. But like you said, it also, when a person goes to work somewhere and they're aware of those controls, if they get in the situation that their child got sick and they've now got $50,000 worth of medical bills and they work in AP, well, we're already writing checks. We've got workers' comp and we write checks to the such and such doctor's office and such hospitals. Nobody'd ever know. Oh, well, they will know because we have these checks and balances. So in desperate times, if people know those are in place, you're right. They are aware of the controls. So an innocent or a person who might be desperate and might make a bad decision, they know they can't, and those who don't necessarily live the straight line all the time, if they're aware of them, then they they're aware that they have prevention. Now, unfortunately, if there's a few people and they can get together and start talking, and while I happen to be friends with Johnny over here, well, and I know we both have gambling habits, and Sharon over there, she's got a gambling habit too, and Tom over there likes to race fast cars. We all, we don't really, there's right and wrong, but there's kind of gray areas a lot. Well, if we can start talking, and we don't really care about bending the rules, a lot of times then your controls don't work as well. When you get a lot of people, if they're in the right positions, then those controls can be basically, they can be overcome because, first of all, you have segregation of duties. If you have these 4 people in collusion and they're in the right positions, then the segregation of duties go by the wayside because this person can approve that person's entry, and this person can do this, and this person can do that. And and if you have approvals or authority or verifications, different access issues, user rights, if you have a few different people involved, then unfortunately your controls are not going to be nearly as effective. And as we get to access rights, this is a very important control that people don't seem to pay as attention to as they should. They think, okay, I've set this user up, they're good. And sometimes if the auditors are going to come, we hand them the user right list and we check it over once a year maybe. It's very important if a person's responsibilities change, or the positions change within the company, user rights are looked at. I worked at a company that a person worked in the payroll department. Then they took a new position in the purchasing department. Well, she didn't have quite the ethics that you would hope a person would have, especially if they were responsible in the payroll department. And she was now a purchasing manager. And she started dating a manager in another department, and they didn't take away her payroll rights. And they got to talking about something, so she said, let me look. They pulled up the whole company's payroll and started discussing this information. And this other manager who, yes, he had rights to his team's payroll, but not the whole company's, then went to the president of the company with the entire company's payroll and brought up issues. Needless to say, that purchasing manager was fired, but then the IT manager was fired because that was a very important responsibility that they had not taken care of. So, one thing is we think about internal controls only being accounting. Here's a situation that internal control is your computer department, which, yes, a lot of times the computer department does kind of fold into your accounting department, but I know as companies are growing, as our computer systems are getting more sophisticated, a lot of times those are separating. So it is more important that while internal controls are under the hat of the accounting department, those internal controls that are understood by the computer team, those are managed by them, and it's all communicated between both departments, how imperative that is. And I know there's even more computer controls beyond just SOX related or accounting related. As you get into different industries, there's HIPAA and FERPA, and then there's also just the security issues related to computer industry that I don't even know how they do. And there's a lot of that I can't even imagine how they take care of it. And I don't want to. But as we talk about who's responsible for the controls, yes, it is typically the controller, the CFO, the accounting department, but it will be interrelated with other teams, such as the computer department manager responsibility. But also, it is ultimately responsible for each employee in the company. If they're an employee in that company, they actually have ownership of their responsibilities, and whatever information, whatever portion of their job, they are responsible for the controls, whether it's responsible for segregation of duties. If they're responsible for approving this piece, then that's what they need to do. They shouldn't take it upon themselves to go ahead and do the next step. They need to follow the process. And it's also everyone's responsibility that if they see something that isn't right, that they bring that to whoever's attention and have that addressed. So beyond just the standard three lines saying detection, prevention, and correction, and being the responsibility of the CFO, it's everybody's responsibility to make sure all the controls are in place and followed. So in addition to this, if you go into the next discussion question on the financial statement, committing, how people commit fraud on financial statements. There's a real good tie in what type of fraud is committed and the controls. It's for a person to commit fraud, there had to be controls that were violated or missed. So while you're preparing your answers for your second question, think about the answers for the controls, and it should help you think of those answers of how someone could commit financial statement fraud as well. That is about all I had. This class and my last one, I'm trying something new, and it'll just depend on how many people are there. I'm trying to just talk about the discussion question material and see how that goes. I'll try it once or twice, and if that doesn't work, then I'll just prepare something over the course material. So that's what I have. If you have questions, let me know. Otherwise, remember you have in addition to your normal work, there's a mini research paper at the end of this week, and then don't forget that there is a research paper at the end of this class. I don't want that sneaking up on you. So that's all I have for tonight.
Okay.
Okay? Well, I don't want to make this long because I know everybody is busy and this has a lot of work. So have a good night.
You too.
Okay, yep. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.